Hello, everyone. I hope you are well. Today, I want to talk about the mysterious disappearance of the crime writer Agatha Christie. So, in her lifetime, she did go missing, and it's very contested as to what actually happened. So, I'm going to go into all the different theories of her disappearance and into the actual disappearance and give my own personal opinions on it, because I've always found it very fascinating, this period. So, that's why I wanted to do a full video on it. I love Agatha Christie's work. And there are missing people, and mystery is the whole thing of her work. And in her own lifetime, she had her own little mystery with this disappearance, which was widely covered. And I'm going to go into all of that as well. So many people would say that the Agatha Christie disappearance happened on the 9th of December 1926, and that's where you should begin the story, because that is the day she actually went missing. But I don't think that's when the story began. I actually think it began in the April of the same year. I think something very significant happened to Agatha Christie in the April. She then had loads of other things happen to her which led to the disappearance. So a little bit of before April, I'm just going to tell you what her life was like. So at this time, she was married. She was married to Colonel Archibald Christie, and she took his name, and his name was on her writings. She was very successful. All her books had been met with great success. She had published loads. They've been turned into plays. They were going worldwide. She was financially doing very well and had bought her mansion, and she had renamed it Styles after a character in her first book, and everything from the outside was going incredibly well for her. And she had a 7-year-old daughter called Rosalind with her husband. So her and her husband were living in this beautiful mansion. She had literary success. Her husband was successful. They had this 7-year-old daughter, and everything was going well for the pair. And then what happened is, in April 1926, when her daughter is 7 years old, Agatha Christie's mother dies. Agatha Christie is absolutely devastated by this, and she decides to move out of her marital home. So she moves back into her childhood home. So at this point, her and her husband are living in two separate houses. I couldn't work out where her daughter Rosalind was at this point, because Rosalind spent some of her childhood in boarding schools, so I couldn't work out if she was with her mum and dad or in boarding school at the time. There are then articles put into newspapers saying that Agatha Christie has suffered a breakdown, that she is being overworked by her publishers, and that the expectation of deadlines on her is too much, and she has had to take a break because she has had a breakdown. And so that's where I think this story really begins. Her mother has died. She's dealing with the grief of it. She's had a breakdown from all the work that's on her and having to meet her publisher's deadlines. Even though at this point she was so successful, her publishers still held her to really hard deadlines. She then, one night, her husband comes, and that is in August of 1926. So in April, her mother has died. She then has a breakdown. And then in August, her husband comes to the house in which Agatha Christie is living. They're living in two separate houses at this point, and her husband announces that he has been having an affair with his secretary, Nancy Neely. But more than that, he is leaving Agatha Christie to marry Nancy Neely. He says, I want you to divorce me. I'm absolutely in love with this woman. I'm going to marry her, and I'm going to have children with her. Agatha Christie is devastated by this, did not see this coming. She's obviously dealing with the grief of her mother, and so she's absolutely shocked by the whole situation. And it seems very much she was in denial. She thought, well, maybe we'll work it out. I don't understand what's going on. And then on the 3rd of December, she had a big argument with her husband, and he said that he was going to spend the weekend with friends and she wasn't going to be there with his friends. So he was going to go off and have this weekend. During this time, I think he was still having a relationship with Nancy Neely. I think it's quite obvious, because when him and Agatha Christie got divorced, a week after they got divorced, he married Nancy Neely and went on to have a son with her. So he was obviously still in a relationship with this woman. So in August, he says, I want a divorce. In December, 3rd of December, they have this argument, and he says, I'm going off to my friends. Bye, you're not coming. And that's it. That's when she really goes missing. The following morning, so the 4th of December, her car is discovered. And her car is discovered at Newlands Corner, which is a massive nature reserve. But it's interesting how the car is found. So it's in the nature reserve, but where it is parked, it is parked by somewhere called the Silent Pool, which a silent pool is a lake. And the car is described as being driven into a bush, as if someone is trying to hide the car so no one can see it. So you'd have to really be like walking past it and see it, but from a distance you wouldn't be able to see it. So it's weirdly parked on this nature reserve in a bush, like really undercover in this bush. Inside they find an expired driving license and clothes, belongings in the car, and the police assume this is a suicide because it is near this lake. The car looks like someone doesn't want it to be discovered, but the car is not stolen. It hasn't been involved in any kind of crime, so they think that whoever has put the car in the bush, whoever the car belongs to, has gone on to commit suicide in the Silent Pool, which is a lake nearby. So they think the person has drowned themselves. News gets out that this is Agatha Christie's car, and this becomes a massive story. You can't underestimate how much this story runs out of control and how quickly. So the Home Secretary gets involved, and everyone knows the crime writer Agatha Christie has gone missing. Her car was found near this body of water. She's believed to be drowned. The Home Secretary, William Johnson Hicks, pressures the police and newspaper to offer a reward. And they offer a £100 reward, which in 2023 is equivalent to $7,500. More than 1,000 police officers, 15,000 volunteers, and several aeroplanes are put out to search this nature reserve, which is a huge rural landscape that they are trying to search. Now, at this point, she hasn't been missing very long, and everyone has gone into overdrive because of how her car was. They assume this may be she has drowned, something terrible has happened to her. Why was the car obscured? What's going on here? So some kind of foul play, and that she's no longer with us. And the newspapers keep writing so many articles on this. This mystery writer has gone missing. And at this point, Agatha Christie is very famous, as I said, so people know who she is. So it's a big story, and the amount of police work that went into this trying to find her is huge as well. There's also odd little things about it, like other authors got involved with their own trying to searches into it. Famously, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who he wrote the Sherlock Holmes novels, he was very into like the occult and mediums, and he took a medium, one of Agatha Christie's gloves, and said, "Can you use this glove with your powers to find her in some way?" This actually made it over to America as well. The New York Times run it on the front page, and other magazines in America actually run it, and it becomes a huge story. And quite a tragic story, because I read some of the articles and people are acting as if she's already passed away. That what has happened to this author, it can't be anything good. Her car was obscured in a bush. Has someone forced her out of her car? Has she herself, for some reason, committed suicide? The news of her husband telling her months earlier, he wanted to divorce her, is not in the press. So no one knows about that side of it at all. They can't find her. They search everywhere and they don't find her. And then a banjo player phones the police. His name was Bob Tappan, and he was referred to as Mr. Tappan, and he performed in the hotel band. And he says, "I'm working in this hotel, and one of the guests looks like that Agatha Christie that's all over these newspapers as missing. She's a very relaxed woman around the hotel. She doesn't seem to be in any kind of danger or anything. But I just think it's Agatha Christie staying at this hotel that I work at." He then, after he phones the police, he phones her husband. And I'm guessing that's because her husband must have put his details in the newspaper. Any tips, you can go directly to her husband. So he phones her husband at the same time, basically. The police, then her husband. So the police and her husband both go to the hotel at the same time to try and see, is this banjo player just making this up? This doesn't really seem to make sense. And it's on the 14th of December that they get this phone call. So they go to this hotel. It's called the Swan Hydropathic Hotel. And it is 184 miles from her home. And they go into the lounge area and they see her sitting on a chair. And she is reading a newspaper. And in the newspaper she is reading, it has talk of her disappearance. And she is sitting in the hotel lounge for everyone to see, reading this newspaper. She had registered under a different name, and I think this is very significant. So she obviously hadn't said, I'm Agatha Christie. She'd called herself Miss Tressa Neely. And that's significant because Neely is the last name of her husband's lover, who he has told her in August, I'm leaving you for a woman called Nancy Neely. And then she in the December has gone missing and registers herself at the hotel as Miss Tressa Neely. So I think that's very interesting that she used that name. Not any other name. She had written so many fictional characters over the years. She had an amazing imagination, yet she had called herself that. She then was diagnosed after this incident by two separate doctors diagnosed her as having a genuine loss of memory, but they didn't give her any kind of disorder because they said she had lost her memory in their opinion and ended up at the hotel somehow, but that it wasn't a disorder that was long lasting, that her memory had now been restored and that it hadn't left any permanent damage. So it wasn't an actual registered thing that they could really say it was. They didn't know what it was. And public opinion of her at that time was terrible because people thought that it was a publicity stunt to sell her novels, which doesn't really make sense because she was a best-selling novelist at the time. So she didn't need this publicity stunt, as people thought it was, to promote her works. And to put that many, 1,000 police officers, 15,000 people out searching for her, to do all that just to sell your books is incredibly callous. And as a very famous best-selling writer, just really doesn't make sense. There was another theory, and that is that people thought she was attempting to frame her husband for murder, that she had put her car where she had put it, and that people would think that her husband had drowned her, or that he had put her body somewhere on the nature reserve. But obviously there was no body, there was no evidence of foul play. She did not smash the car windows to make it look like she had been dragged from the car and kidnapped. So that's what led the police to suicide as opposed to any kind of foul play. The police always leaned more to thinking it was a suicide. Did not think at all that she had made herself go missing and just gone and stayed at a hotel and not told anyone. And then when the articles in the newspapers were rolling out, she didn't contact the police or anyone to say, actually, I'm okay, I'm absolutely fine. She said that she doesn't know what happened, and she always kept to that. And it's actually interesting because she wrote an autobiography, and in it she didn't talk about the disappearance. She didn't even mention it once that she went missing. So she has just always put it as a weird freak loss of memory, which is what she was diagnosed by two doctors as having. Now, I'm going to tell you some other people's opinion on this. Her biographer Morgan believes she disappeared with something which is called fugue state, and that is a psychiatric condition where you have reversible amnesia and you lose identity, and people often travel with this very far from their homes and get lost. And so that's what her biographer thought she had. The author Jared Cade had a much more scathing opinion on it. He said that she planned the whole thing to embarrass her husband because he was going to leave her, and she didn't realise how big the story was going to become, how much police manpower they were going to put into it, how much the press was just going to run with it. We then have Christie's biographer Laura Thompson, who thinks that Christie had a nervous breakdown. and that she didn't really know what was going on, and that's what led to this. It was just a nervous breakdown. I think my theory on the whole thing is she hid her car in the way it was hidden because she didn't want anyone to find it. She didn't want anyone to think it was foul play or suicide. I don't believe that at all. I think she hid her car how she did in the bush because she thought no one is going to see it. It's on this massive nature reserve. No one is going to see the car, and I'm going to go to this hotel, and I am furious with my husband. We've had a screaming match the night before I've gone missing, and I just want to be alone. And maybe if he spends that time away from me, he will realise how much he loves me. He will realise how much he misses me, and he will have that time to reflect upon our marriage. Or that she wanted him to chase after her. She wanted him the next day to go, where on earth is she? Let me go out and chase and look for her, and not involve the police but himself look for her. I don't think she thought he was going to phone the police. I don't think it makes sense that way. I don't think she wanted the public spectacle. I actually disagree that she was trying to embarrass her husband or anything publicly. I think she just thought either he's going to run and chase after me, or more likely he will just think, okay, well, she's a very capable woman. She's made herself, kind of disappear, if you will. She's gone on a holiday by herself, but she's done that because she's angry with me. She's going to pop back up. She's trying to teach me a lesson, but I'm not going to call the police because I can understand that she's just furious with the situation at the moment. He did go on to marry his lover, and he went on to have a child with his lover. And it was actually a week after she divorced him that he married his new lover. And her daughter, interestingly, remained with her. Her daughter was raised, I looked up, in boarding schools, but her daughter was in Agatha Christie's custody and was never in her father's custody after that. Just very interesting disappearance, I find. Everything about it is bizarre. It's interesting how the press also just clang on to it. They kind of loved it. They loved the drama of she's a mystery writer and there is a huge mystery surrounding her. But I think the car is the key in this. I think the car is her putting it in a place that someone's not going to see it. Doesn't lead to me wanting her have all this attention. It leads me to think she thought the car will never be discovered. He will know I've gone away because I'm fuming with him. He's going this weekend away with his friends. Or maybe I can go away myself because you think you can go away with your friends without me. Or maybe I can go away without you. It was to spite him. It was in anger. And I think she thought, I'll pop back up. He probably won't even know I'm missing because he's still with his secretary, who he then went on to marry. Or he's going to really miss me. And then when I pop back up, he'll say, oh, I really missed you. But I don't think he's going to be worried about my safety. As I said, she was a very capable woman. She wasn't a meek woman. She was a very independent woman. And at the time, they were living in two separate houses. So it is understandable that she would think that he would be okay with her going away for a bit. And maybe she thought, well, you have gone off and had an affair, and this weekend you're going to spend it with your friends. Why should I even tell you where I'm going? We're not living in the same house, and you've completely disrespected and disregarded our marriage. So why should I even tell you? And the reason I think the story begins in in April, is because that's when her mother died. So all in the same year, 1926, her mother dies. She then has a breakdown due to overwork. Her husband comes to see her and says, I want to divorce you. And not only do I want to divorce you, I've fallen in love with my secretary and I'm going to marry her after I divorce you. They then have this argument with each other where he says he's spending the weekend with friends without her. Just so much happens. And at the same time, she's got a 7-year-old daughter. So she's obviously thinking about the breakdown of this marriage, how it's going to affect her daughter. And she is going to become a single mother, which is what happened. She became a single mother of a 7-year-old girl. And she's obviously thinking of all these situations. It's also in the 1920s at the time. So it would have been looked down upon, getting divorced and being a single mother at that time. So she's got societal pressures also on her. And it's just so much. From April to December, there's just so much going on in her life that I just think that's what happened. is she was just needed space and a break. And I don't think she thought her husband was going to think anything bad had happened to her, because they weren't living together at the time anyway. I think she just thought he will come to the house, realise I'm not there, go, oh, okay. And then a few days later, he might miss me. And he might come to visit me at the house and realise I'm still not there. And then 5 days later, he comes back to the house and realises, oh, she really has gone. And then he might start to reflect upon his own poor choices at breaking up our marriage and actually start to miss me. And then when I just pop striding back in, he'll say, oh, do you know what? I actually did miss you when you were gone. And that maybe that will help their marriage come back together in some way. So the story is fascinating. It's very open-ended. I realise this isn't maybe a satisfying ending, because people think, is it amnesia? Is it she was trying to frame her husband for murder? Is it she was trying to publicly embarrass him? I think the publicly embarrassing thing doesn't really work with everyone getting involved, the press, the police, the volunteers. I think that's just too much. She would realise that is terrible PR. My books, I need to sell them to people, and if everyone hates me, then how am I going to sell them? I think also you can imagine that when she went to the hotel, she didn't read a newspaper for a few days, didn't realise how big the story was, and then when she started reading the newspapers, she realised, oh wow, this has run out of control. And she probably was going to phone the police to say, I've gone missing myself, everything is fine. And I don't believe the idea that she's sitting in this lounge revelling when the police arrive, reading every detail in the newspaper of her disappearance. I just think there probably was an article in the newspaper about her disappearance, but I don't think she was sitting there reading them out, snipping them all out to scrapbook of her evil revenge on her husband. Because she really didn't get any revenge on him. It all ended negatively affecting her and negative public perception of her after that, because people thought she was some kind of mad who was trying to frame her husband for murder. People did eventually just ignore this whole situation, to be honest. She got remarried. He obviously married his secretary and had a baby with the secretary, but people loved her and they loved her works, so it actually didn't affect her career, because that's what I looked up next. Did it negatively impact her book sales? And it actually didn't. People just loved her works, they loved her novels, they loved going out and seeing her plays, and it didn't negatively affect them. It was just this dramatic melodrama of a whole scene. Unfortunately, police officers 1,000 of them were put onto this case, and so that's when the negative backlash came towards her. But ultimately, people forgot about this incident. And I just think she was just maybe suffering some kind of breakdown. To have all of that happen, your mother's died, your husband is leaving you, you're going to be left alone with your 7-year-old daughter, everything is crumbling around you, your publishers are on your back that you need to meet deadlines and you're not meeting the deadlines. And so your career, personal life, romantic life, all three have crumbled in 1 year. Not even a year. It's April to August, because August is when he tells her he's leaving her, and April is when her mother dies. So it's such a short period of time to be dealt so many personal blows, and that could have been a breakdown. She could have simply had a breakdown, and she wasn't in her right mind, and she wasn't thinking of the consequence of her actions. She just needed to get away, and then everything got spiraled so out of control that she didn't really know what to do, and she felt quite embarrassed to then tell everyone, oh, actually I made myself go missing, and just thought maybe I'll just bury my head in the sand and this will eventually go away. I know that sounds mad, because obviously the police were looking for her, she was famous at the time, someone eventually would have recognised her, so she couldn't have gone on this lie forever. But I think when you have some kind of nervous breakdown, when you're dealt so many blows in a short period of time, you just really are not thinking straight. And I don't think it was some kind of clinical amnesia. I just think she just wasn't thinking straight, because it was just like, oh, here's another thing that's gone wrong. I've gone away for 11 days to try and get back at my husband. Hopefully he'll miss me in those 11 days and wonder where I am. And he won't be worried where I am, but he'll just wonder, I wish she was here. But no, he's gone to the police. He's got them involved. The national newspapers are loving it. They are running amok with this story. Great, just another bad thing to add to my year. Fabulous. She's just had a really bad year. I mean, 1926, I would not want to hear about that again if I was Agatha Christie. If anyone mentioned that year, I would shudder in horror. I'd be like, that's the year my life just crumbled. And then on top of that, the public hates me. Fabulous. So that's my opinion on it. I think it could have been inspired by a breakdown. I think it was inspired by all the horrendous things that happened to her in the space of such a short amount of time. And I think she didn't realise her husband was going to go to the police and turn it into a national and then an international news story. She had no idea it was going to get that big. So I'm going to end this video here. Tell me down below your opinions on it. Do you disagree? Do you think she was trying to frame her husband for murder? I don't think you could fake your own murder and there was nothing else that she was doing. And the way the car was so disguised, I think she just genuinely thought no one was going to find it. I'm going to end it here. Tell me what you think about this. I'm going to be doing more videos like this where I go in depth into different historical authors' lives and interesting things or tragic things within their lives. So tell me if you like this style of video, and I will see you again soon for another video.